In this video, we're going to be rebuilding a Carter BBD carburetor. This is from my '89 Jeep Wrangler, which is the YJ version of the Wrangler. I rebuilt this carburetor as part of my cheap Jeep build series, where I bought a cheap Jeep Wrangler and I'm trying to get it back on the road. There's a link in the description for that full series. You should definitely check it out. This is going to be an in-depth look at that process. I will show the full disassembly, cleaning, and reassembly of the carburetor. I'm taking photos because I'm going to need to reference them when I go to reassemble the carburetor. To remove the stepper motor, I will be using a T20 driver. There's a little spring in here, so be careful not to lose that. There's also a small spring here and a little metal ball, so don't lose those. To remove the float, you first have to remove the main needle valve. There's also another small ball right here. I'm not going to take this section apart right now because I'm concerned that I would just forget how it goes back together and possibly lose the parts, so I'm going to clean it as it is. Now a good way to clean these parts would be to just soak them in gas overnight and then blow them off with some brake cleaner, but I'm going to use an ultrasonic cleaner. It works much better and it's much faster. They're also pretty cheap. The most important part when it comes to cleaning is making sure that there's nothing stuck in any of the jets or any of the little passages inside the carburetor. The ultrasonic cleaner does a really good job of getting into those small areas, but if you don't have one, you still need to make sure that you blow everything out really well and that it soaks in gas for a long enough time to free up anything that's inside those channels. This is the carburetor repair kit that I'm using, and there'll be a link in the description. I'm very carefully and gently removing the old gasket with a razor blade. and a wire brush. These kits are made to work with multiple versions of these carburetors, so you're not going to use all the gaskets that are included. So I'm going through to figure out exactly which gasket I need. There's that little metal ball. And now I go through the multiple smaller gaskets and I find the two that are correct for this carburetor. The kit does include those little metal balls, so I'm using one of the new ones here because the old one had rust on it. You also get a new main needle valve, which is what I'm using here. So now I am going to take this section apart so that I can replace the plunger for the accelerator pump. These carburetor kits typically come with a document that includes a diagram showing how the carburetor is assembled. They also come with instructions on how to make certain adjustments, like how to adjust the float level and how to adjust the accelerator pump. I will include that spec sheet at the end of this video. On this carburetor, it was easy to see little indentions in the plastic where these set screws were previously, so I was able to put it back exactly the way that it was. If I were to put this carburetor back in the Jeep and it ran poorly, this is probably the first thing that I would come back to and adjust to see if that fixed the problem. So I'm being very careful here because there are those two needle valves that need to go down into the jets at the bottom of the carburetor. So you want to be careful not to damage those. I'm connecting this rod, but I'm going to find out later that this is backwards and I have to take it off and redo it. So now I'm putting the stepper motor back on, and I'm putting that little spring back on there, so don't forget that. Also, the two shafts on this motor are different size, so it only goes in one way. So you can see here it won't fit that way. And then there you go, it fits in like that. I'm just holding it up here to keep the spring from falling off. So this is where I realized that that rod is on backwards. It's interfering with this part. I checked the photos and sure enough it's on wrong. To get the rod off, I had to take the bottom plate back off of the carburetor. And I just dropped that clip, but that's okay. The kit comes with new ones anyways. And now that that rod is on correctly, this part fits as it should. This is a vacuum control and the housing for the choke thermostat. Again, initially I have a rod that's not exactly set up correctly, and I recognize that, and then I move it. If it's not correct, you'll notice pretty easily because the thermostat won't fit on there. It won't control it the way that it should. So right there, I notice that that's not correct. It won't fit on. So I check the photos. And sure enough, that rod has to be moved over. There. Now you can see that the choke thermostat fits and it functions as it should. I should note this thermostat is actually broken. There should be a little metal tab on this back side where you can plug it in to an electric wire. And mine's broken. I have ordered a new one, but again, you'll see at the end of the video, it runs actually just fine the way that it is, even with this thermostat that doesn't plug in. But I have ordered a new one, so I will be replacing that. Okay, so now it's back together. Let's put it on the Jeep and see if it works. You can see it actually runs pretty good. Okay, and as promised, here's the spec sheet for the carburetor. Hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.